We are going to explore the single most important concept that governs our lives, our societies, and ultimately our survival. It isn't just about money, stock markets, or interest rates. It is about the physical reality of the planet we live on. We need to talk about scarcity. If you boil down the study of economics to its absolute core, you are left with one massive conflict. Human beings have unlimited wants. We always want more. More energy, more food, more technology, more comfort. But we live on a planet with limited resources. This clash creates the fundamental economic challenge of scarcity. So, what is economics really? It isn't just math. Economics is the study of how we allocate these limited resources through strategic choices to maximize efficiency. Every time we decide to build a factory, pave a road, or protect a forest, we are making an economic calculation about how to use what little we have. To manage these resources, we first have to understand what they are. We classify natural resources into distinct categories, and mixing them up is a dangerous mistake. First, we have renewable resources. These are the heroes of the sustainable future, things like solar energy, wind power, and timber, if managed correctly. They have the ability to replenish naturally over time. Then, we have the resources that are running out, non-renewable resources. This includes oil, coal, and crude, and minerals. These have finite supplies. Once we burn that barrel of oil, it is gone forever. But there is a nuance here that often gets missed. We also have flow resources, like the tides and the wind currents. These are technically neither renewable nor non-renewable in the traditional sense. They are constant forces of nature we can harness. On the other hand, we have rare earth minerals, which hold massive strategic importance because they are the building blocks of our modern technology. Understanding these distinctions is the first step in deciding how to use them. Now, what happens when a resource doesn't belong to anyone in particular, but everyone has access to it? We encounter a concept famously described by Garrett Hardin in 1968, the tragedy of the commons. Imagine a public lake full of fish. It is in every individual fisherman's self-interest to catch as many fish as possible today. If they don't, someone else will, right? But when everyone acts in this self-interest, they deplete the shared resource. The result is a paradox. By pursuing short-term gain for themselves, they create long-term ruin for everyone. We see this happening right now with overfishing in our oceans, overgrazing of land, and atmospheric pollution. The atmosphere is the ultimate common resource. We dump carbon into it because it's free to do so, but collectively, we are degrading the air we all need to breathe. So how do we fix this? We need a new definition of success. We need to talk about sustainability. But sustainability isn't just about being green. The true definition is meeting our present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. To do this, we use a framework called the triple bottom line. Imagine three pillars holding up our society. Economic profit, because businesses need to survive. Social fairness, because people need to be treated ethically. Environmental protection, because we need a planet to live on. These three pillars intersect to create a holistic approach to resource management. If you focus only on profit, you destroy the planet. If you focus only on the environment without thinking of economics, people lose their livelihoods. True sustainability is found in the balance. Let's look at the math. How are we actually doing with that balance? Not well. We measure this using the ecological footprint. This metric compares our human consumption against the Earth's biocapacity, that is, the planet's ability to regenerate what we use. The data reveals a frightening reality. We currently use approximately 1.7 Earths per year. We are essentially spending our capital rather than living off the interest. This deficit is marked by a date known as Earth Overshoot Day. This is the specific day on the calendar when humanity has exhausted all the resources Earth can regenerate in that entire year. Every day after that date, we are stealing from the future. How did we get here? It started with the energy source that built the modern world, the fossil fuel economy. The Industrial Revolution was built on the back of coal, oil, and gas. Why? Because they offer incredibly high energy density, and we have the existing infrastructure to use them. It was efficient and it was powerful. But this foundation is cracking. We now know these fuels create carbon emissions and cause massive damage during extraction. Furthermore, our economic dependence on oil means that simple price fluctuations in the oil market affect the cost of nearly everything in modern society. When oil goes up, food prices go up, shipping goes up, and the economy shakes. We are addicted to a volatile, dirty fuel. The alternative is obvious, but it isn't easy. We are currently in the green energy transition, shifting towards sustainable power like solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal. However, this transition faces economic hurdles. We are looking at high initial investment costs. We have to solve the problem of battery storage. What do we do when the sun doesn't shine? And we need massive updates to our grid infrastructure. But there is a golden horizon here called grid parity. This is the moment when renewable energy becomes cheaper to produce than fossil fuels. In many places, we are already there. This shift isn't just good for the air. It creates substantial job opportunities in the green technology sectors. We are building a new engine for the global economy. While we worry about oil, we often ignore the most critical resource of all, water. We call it the blue gold. You might think water is everywhere, but only 2.5% of Earth's water is fresh, and much of that is locked away in ice. Here is the shocking statistic. Agriculture consumes approximately 70% of global freshwater supplies. We are facing economic water scarcity. This occurs when water exists in the ground, but we lack the infrastructure to get it to people. As supply drops and demand rises, we are looking at the potential for future conflicts over water rights and the damming of rivers. The wars of the future may be fought over rivers, not oil fields. Water is crucial because we need to eat. This brings us to food security and sustainable agriculture. By 2050, we need to feed a population of roughly 10 billion people. But the traditional way we farm, cutting down forests and spraying chemicals, is reaching its limit. We are dealing with soil erosion, pesticide runoff, and deforestation. To survive, we have to innovate. We are looking at solutions like vertical farming, which uses less land and water. We are seeing the rise of drip irrigation to save water, lab-grown meat to reduce cattle emissions, and genetically modified organisms, GMOs, that balance yield efficiency with ecological impact. We have to grow more with less. In economics, when you buy a product, the price is supposed to reflect the cost to make it. But what if it doesn't? This is the concept of externalities, the hidden costs. A negative externality occurs when a third party suffers a cost that isn't reflected in the product price. This creates a market failure. Think about a factory polluting a river to make cheap t-shirts. The factory makes a profit and you get a cheap shirt, but the community downstream has to pay to clean the water. That is a negative externality. The polluter isn't paying the true cost. Society is. We need economic solutions that internalize these expenses, making the polluter pay. When we ignore these hidden costs, we end up with a global waste crisis. We have created monstrosities like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, a floating island of plastic accumulation. Meanwhile, on land, our landfills are filling up, and the old strategy of exporting waste to other countries is declining globally. It's not just ugly, it's dangerous. Rotting organic waste in landfills produces methane emissions, a potent greenhouse gas contributing to climate change. This creates massive economic costs through disposal fees and the loss of valuable raw materials that are just sitting in a dump. The problem is our system's shape. We are currently living in a linear economy. The pattern is take resources, make a product, and dispose of it. It is inherently wasteful. We need to transform production models into a circular economy. In a circular economy, we reduce, reuse, recycle, and repair. We design products to be disassembled so their parts can be used again. The goal is to keep resources in use as long as possible. Imagine a phone designed to be upgraded forever, rather than thrown away every 2 years. That is the circular future. If we don't fix the waste and the emissions, we face the economic impacts of environmental change. Climate change is no longer just a scientific theory. It is a line item on the global budget. It impacts GDP directly through extreme weather, damaging our infrastructure and destroying crops. If you live in a high-risk area, you already know this. Insurance premiums are skyrocketing. We have two economic choices: adaptation or mitigation. Adaptation means building seawalls and changing what crops we grow to survive the new heat. Mitigation means reducing emissions now to prevent the severity later. Both cost money, but mitigation is far cheaper in the long run. These problems are too big for one country to solve alone. Pollution doesn't stop at the border. This requires global cooperation, specifically through the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, set by the United Nations as a framework for 2030. These include 17 specific goals. Key among them are Goal 12, Responsible Consumption and Production, and Goal 13, Climate Action. International cooperation is essential because environmental challenges cross national borders. We need collective action to ensure that one country's progress isn't canceled out by another country's pollution. So how do governments actually enforce these goals? They have a set of policy tools. Generally, these fall into two buckets: command and control versus market-based solutions. Command and control is the stick, bans and strict regulations. You cannot dump chemicals here. Market-based approaches are the carrot, or a smarter stick. Things like carbon taxes and cap-and-trade permit systems. Governments also use financial subsidies to support clean energy adoption. By making green tech cheaper, they help transition economies towards sustainable practices. It's about rigging the market in favor of the planet. It's not just governments. Businesses are waking up too. This is the era of corporate social responsibility, CSR. Businesses are starting to self-regulate, but investors are pushing even harder through ESG investing. That stands for environmental, social, and governance criteria. Investors are increasingly moving capital away from polluters and towards sustainable firms. Money talks. However, we have to be careful of greenwashing. This is when companies make false sustainability claims just for marketing. We need to look at the data, not just the green logo. If we want to maintain our quality of life without destroying the planet, we need innovation and technology. Think of technology as a resource multiplier. It allows us to do more with less. Innovations like electric vehicles, carbon capture, and desalination plants increase our efficiency and reduce our impact. Research and development is what drives this economic progress. A perfect example is the light bulb. LED lights consume far less energy than old incandescent bulbs to produce the same light. That is technology saving resources without us having to sit in the dark. We live in a connected world. Globalization and resource trade define our economy. Resources aren't distributed evenly. Africa has raw materials, Asia has manufacturing, and consumers are worldwide. This creates complex international resource distribution chains. But this comes with a cost. International commerce generates massive shipping emissions. It also raises ethical concerns. We need to ensure that the materials in our phones aren't conflict minerals mined in war zones. Ethical sourcing is the new standard for global trade. We've talked about governments and corporations, but what about you? This is the role of the consumer. You have immense individual power in the market. It's called dollar voting. Every time you buy something, you are signaling demand to the market. If you demand sustainable products, companies are forced to change. Small choices add up. Reducing single-use plastics, buying local, eating less meat, and choosing slow fashion over fast fashion create meaningful environmental impact. You are the boss of the economy. So what is the future outlook? Can we build a sustainable economy? The ultimate goal is building long-term prosperity. To do this, we have to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation. We are facing a choice between degrowth movements, consuming less, and green growth strategies, consuming smarter. Ultimately, we need a shift in mindset. We need to shift our focus from a standard of living based on consumption to a quality of life based on well-being. That is the path that ensures long-term survival and prosperity for all. Thank you for watching. The economic problem of scarcity is real, but so is human ingenuity. We have the tools, the technology, and the economic strategies to fix this. It's just a matter of making the right choice.